Good morning and welcome everybody to the Lakers Lowdown podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin of Lakers Daily, here to talk to you today about, well, we got some injury updates as the Lakers and Nuggets prepare for Game 5, including one huge one that is going to be worth monitoring all the way up until game time. So we'll talk about that. And also, right, as a kind of back half of that conversation, or a back half of that subject, we'll also cover, some pickup from where Raj and I talked yesterday about, not taking care of business when you absolutely could. The Minnesota Timberwolves did take care of business, so we're going to talk about that and how they now get to rest while the Nuggets try to close out their series against the Lakers, and also the team that they just beat, the Suns, yet another three max type team that is now going home early. And I want to talk a little bit about why I would prefer the Lakers not pursue a third max contract type player this summer. And then finally, it is a Sunday/Monday episode, which means we'll be diving into the mailbag. As a reminder, please do send those 5-star reviews to iTunes, and I will answer any question that I get in the form of a 5-star review there. I also asked for questions on Twitter, and obviously, if you are watching live right now on YouTube or Twitter, you can send in your questions there as well, and I will get to those over the course of the show or on the back half of the show. So those of you who are watching live right now, please do hit that subscribe button on YouTube. The show has been I think we just crossed 3,000 subscribers or something like that this weekend. Let's keep that baby rolling, and either enjoy the rest of this postseason together, and or get ready for the fascinating offseason ahead. And then if you guys are watching on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@LakersLounge and hit the subscribe button there. And if you guys are listening to this in the morning in pod form, go ahead and subscribe to the pod wherever you get it, preferably from Odyssey, but wherever. I don't care. Just listen wherever you can, and also tell your friends. Tell whoever you bump into today. You're at the office. There's some rando that you can't quite figure what to say beyond how's it going in the morning. Hey, you a Laker fan? Oh yeah, me too. Awesome. Listen to the Lakers Lounge. Let's go ahead and dive in. So the Lakers and Nuggets are mere hours from their game 5, and it's an interesting game 5. I obviously, and Vegas agrees. Obviously, the Lakers are heavy underdogs going into Denver, and yet, if they start the game quickly as they have all series, and those Denver Nuggets fans start to get a little nervous about the fact that, holy crap, they can't lose this game and hope to really feel all that confident going into the rest of the series. This gets really interesting. And then what makes it even more interesting, on the Lakers half of things, according to the injury report, Cam Reddish is out, but Jared Vanderbilt was raised to questionable, upgraded to questionable. And Christian Wood is now off of the injury report altogether. On the Nuggets side of things, Jamal Murray is now considered questionable with a left calf strain. Those calf strains are really tricky, right? Remember Kevin Durant, before he blew his Achilles, again, to be absolutely clear, not asking or hoping for this in any way whatsoever. I legitimately hope that Jamal Murray can play through this and play through it without having to worry about further concern here. But Kevin Durant in the playoffs had a calf strain, played through it, and tore his Achilles in that very same series, right? The calf strain is a very tricky muscle because it's involved in such fast twitch stuff. Like I said in the last conversation that I had with Raj on Saturday night, to the north you have the knee, and to the south you have the ankle/Achilles. That is not a region of the body that you want to take lightly here. And also Jamal Murray, almost like the reason he hasn't made an all-star team in his career to this point is because of the injury issues with him, right? And obviously incredible player when he's healthy, incredible player when he is fully engaged, as he tends to be, or as he always is in the postseason. This has been a quieter series for by Murray's standards in the playoffs, but this is not, and like this is an injury that the Nuggets and he have to be really careful with. And again, had the Nuggets, and I saw, it was funny because I had Nuggets fans like really kind of angry at me for tweeting, "Hey, I think you might regret playing extra playoff games when you didn't necessarily have to." Um, and like their response to it was like, "Oh, well, they did it last year too." It's like that's not a response. Like that's not a counterpoint. It means that they have now apparently made a habit of kind of taking those games lightly. I didn't think they were playing with a ton of effort and energy. They gave up 70 points in the paint in game 4. That was the Lakers played well, and the Lakers deserve credit for playing well in that spot. But I thought the Nuggets kind of played with their food there. And now, instead of getting ready to rest up while Minnesota's series is now also over, they have to play this game 5, hope that Jamal Murray's calf doesn't get worse in that game 5, hope that you win game 5, and not have to go back to LA and have Murray play another extra game in this series. And then if you lose game 5, you go back to LA, and the Lakers now have all the momentum that they've ever had, or that they've had against you in a while. They could take care of business in game 6, and now you have a 1-game sample size to continue this dynastic run that they're hoping for. And again, you're playing against a Lakers team now that's playing with house money. They won the 1 game. They have belief now that they can beat you, and now they could potentially get Jared Vanderbilt back here. I don't know. Like Christian Wood technically returned in the last game, in game 4. He was available to play there, but got a DNP CD. If Vanderbilt is available, I don't think he would get thrown into the mix there, because the rotation there is tricky. But look, you haven't gotten anything from Spencer Dinwiddie anyway. I'd give him those minutes. I'd give Vanderbilt those minutes and just see how well he does there. You need some physicality against Aaron Gordon. It'd be nice to have a little extra size out there. And considering 14 or so of those minutes are going to Spencer Dinwiddie, who hasn't done anything in this series. So if Vanderbilt is available, I don't think he'd play, but I think now that I've kind of talked about it out loud a little bit, I think I would probably give him a shot. What's the worst that can happen? You aren't getting anything from Spencer Dinwiddie. He can't be much worse, so you may as well go out there and play somebody with a little bit of extra size and physicality, and see if Vanderbilt can either limit possessions from Denver's perspective or get you a couple extra possessions of your own over the course of a game that, yeah, the longer it goes and as it remains close, those nerves are going to start kicking up for Denver, and they're going to start feeling it from that Denver fan base. And shit can happen, man. Once you allow a playoff series to go longer than it needs to, you open yourself up for shit to possibly happen. And all the credit in the world to Minnesota for taking care of business in Phoenix and ending that Suns season the way that they did, and not now having to worry about shit happening in game 5 or game 6 or whatever. Now Denver has to worry about that, and they're playing against a team now that has more belief than ever or recently, to that they can win. Stuff could potentially happen there. Speaking of those Phoenix Suns, obviously they quote unquote, won the offseason this last summer, right? They traded for Kevin Durant, they traded for Bradley Beal, and made some I thought good signings on the margins, right? Problem was there was so much overlap with all of the players who were considered good signings, and that's, you have to take fit and culture into account in today's NBA. You have to. And I thought Phoenix threw together a 2K roster, right? You have Devin Booker, you have Bradley Beal, you have Kevin Durant, 3 ISO scorers, 3 bucket getters, who at any moment you think could just take over a game on their own. But the problem is, whether it's because of Frank Vogel's coaching or because of, like, a lot of times superstars don't like setting screens. And for whatever reason, we are now 2 years into, or a year and some change into, the Devin Booker, Kevin Durant working relationship. And I don't think I have ever seen those 2 guys run a pick and roll together. And that's insane to me, right? I mean, I know that Kevin Durant isn't your typical screen setter. He's a skinnier guy, right? He's not exactly a role threat. He's not exactly the best facilitator either. But if you put those 2 people as talented offensively as they are in a set, you would think that something could come out of it. And to, like, not try it at all, again, is either unmitigated disaster by Frank Vogel, but it's hard to really hold it against Frank Vogel, seeing as we didn't see it from Monty Williams' team either. Now, Monty Williams, we found out this last year, not exactly the best head coach in the world either, given what kind of a disaster he watched over in Detroit. But it's just crazy to me that Durant and Booker have now played well over a season together, and I have never seen them run a set that involves the both of them at the same time. That is just such a huge missed opportunity. And the Suns found a little bit of success over the course of the year running Beal at point guard. But again, like, Beal isn't a point guard. He can facilitate, but he doesn't think the game the way that a point guard does. We know the point guards are important. And even if it isn't like I tend to think when you have a ball dominant wing, or in Phoenix's case, a couple of them in Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, that the type of point guard that you need is like an Alex Caruso type who thinks the game like a point guard, understands, hey, so-and-so hasn't got a touch here and there, and is also willing to do the small things. But the Suns, they traded away Chris Paul. They traded away Campaign, or lost Campaign, I think, to free agency, just didn't bring him back. And you look across that roster, and you had Eric Gordon playing some point guard here and there. And again, like, air quotes on point guard there, because Eric Gordon doesn't think the game through the way that a point guard does. They just didn't employ a point guard on that team. And I think that really hurt them. And, you combine all of these things, and, they trade DeAndre Ayton, they bring in Nurkic, right? And Nurkic was a okay fit in some spots, but obviously a very limited player, especially defensively. And I think eventually that kind of hurt Phoenix on that end as well. And, the amount of cap that your 3 main guys take up there, with Bradley Beal making upwards of $60 million. I think Kevin Durant makes about 50. Devin Booker makes in that same range as well. That's like the vast majority of your cap. And if you're going to give up, like, if you're going to have that much of your cap allotted towards those 3 guys, one of them has to be willing to do the small things that help teams win. But that's not how any of those 3 guys are wired. And, to kind of bring this to where the Lakers sit currently, and as they get ready to potentially head into their offseason as soon potentially as tomorrow night, a big subject of conversation this offseason is going to be whether or not they pursue a 3rd star. And the types of stars that we have heard to this point are Donovan Mitchell and Trae Young. Neither of those 2 guys do the small things. They're both small, but they don't do the small things that help you win basketball games. They don't get after it defensively. They don't dive for loose balls. I don't know why I sounded Irish. They don't dive. They don't do those things. They are that's not how they're wired. They are bucket getters. They are ball dominant point guards whose first and second intentions are to score the basketball. And if you're gonna, like, the reason the 3-star model is now dead is because, and this is for everybody. And I got some pushback there that, like, other teams have 3-star. No, like, the 3-star model that I'm talking about here is 3 supermax contract type players, right? 3 of them. Denver has 3 really, really, really good players. They have Jokic, who's the best player in the world. They have Aaron Gordon, who's, for my money, one of the best players at what he does in the league. And you have Jamal Murray, who, in the playoffs is a star, but isn't paid in the regular season like a star because he hasn't done the type of things that you need to do to get a supermax contract. If the Lakers go out and trade for Trae Young, you have LeBron's $60-ish million that are going to be on the books there. You're gonna have Anthony Davis's $50+ million that are going to be on the books there, and then you're gonna have Trae Young at the number that you're gonna have him on at there. Same goes for Donovan Mitchell. And between those 3 players, you don't have somebody. You have AD, who comes closest, I think, to doing the small things, and I think that makes it so that the Lakers, I guess, quote unquote, big 3 in that case, has a better chance at working than the Suns' big 3 did this year. I don't think, like, if you have that group together and they're healthy in the playoffs, I don't think that trio gets swept out of them. But, like, I don't know. For me personally, in this new CBA, given how much it penalizes teams for going above the second apron, and the way that, like, teams literally can't do certain roster building things, can't use certain roster building tools because they go over the second apron. And I don't know. For me, like, that kind of scares me away from having so much of your cap allotted to 3 players. And then you basically have to hope that your veteran minimum signings, like, you hit on more than half of those. You have to draft really well, which the Lakers didn't do last year. So you're going into next year and hoping that Jalen Hood-Schifino. And again, if you trade for a point guard who makes max money and are somehow able to hold on to one of Reeves or D'Angelo Russell, then there again remains a giant roadblock between Jalen Hood-Schifino and any kind of playing time. It's just, and my guess is that Fino would wind up being in that kind of a trade, but not as a real asset. Like, he didn't do anything in the NBA this year. So it would just be like, as a, please consider him an asset kind of a deal. And most teams won't if you're actually negotiating against them. Me personally, I would prefer that the Lakers, if you're going to make an upgrade, they need an upgrade, right? The big mistake that they made this last summer is that you made it to the Western Conference Finals and you thought that that you did something, but you didn't, right? You got to the Western Conference Finals and then you got swept, and then you treated the offseason as like a victory lap for merely making the Western Conference Finals. The nice thing is here, if the Lakers lose in the first round, is that you like that kind of fool's gold sheen is gone from that concept of just running back a team that got swept out of the Western Conference Finals. And again, you could find, you're here on YouTube. I'm sure there are some shows from last summer that are on here still, where I said I don't like the idea that the Lakers are going to hard cap themselves for Taurean Prince and Gabe Vincent, and they're going to let Beasley's expiring walk, and they're going to let Bamba's expiring walk, and those would be 2 potential trade chips that they could have used at the deadline. In a deadline, that like teams were demanding expiring money they just chose to let those things expire, those assets expire. And, they did so for the sake of running back last year's team. And I didn't like that approach. And in this upcoming offseason, you're going to be basically not hard capping yourself, but you're like basically really limiting what your team is going to be able to consist of. If you do basically turn, like, Austin Reeves is only making $12 million. So if he's the centerpiece of a trade that, or a demand that the other team is going to make there, you're still going to have to throw in another like $30 million to be able to match it, which means that, like, and maybe D'Lo opts in, Brian Windhorst seems to think that isn't going to be how this plays out or that plays out. But you like if it's Reeves, you probably have to throw in Rui, then you probably have to throw in maybe Vanderbilt too. And now all of a sudden you've traded 3 rotation players for a guy who doesn't do the small things, Vanderbilt being one of those small things type players. And where are you going to get those small things from? You're going to hope that a veteran minimum player who is trying to fight and scratch and claw to make it to remain in the league is going to do those little things. It's not how that typically goes either. Remember when the Lakers had Russell Westbrook and they basically brought in a whole bunch of minimum guys and all any of them wanted to do was shoot? Yeah, because like for a lot of these guys, your clearest path to remaining in the league is to score, right? And that's the risk that you run there if you do indeed trade for a third star. And now look, maybe like there are examples of the third star thing working, right? The Warriors are kind of the best example of it ever working, but I think that was, in that case, you had 3 homegrown stars and then a jump in the salary cap that allowed you to bring in Kevin Durant. And yeah, that turns out that'll work out, right? But that isn't going to be the scenario here, right? Like if you bring in a third star, it's going to cost you a big chunk of your rotation. And again, like none of the 3 stars that the Lakers would be employing next year are homegrown talent. You didn't draft LeBron James, you didn't draft Anthony Davis. Technically you didn't draft Austin Reeves there, right? But he would probably be in that trade. And whoever you acquire, you obviously wouldn't have drafted either. So like the only ways that I start to see those 3-star models work is if at least 2 of them are like 2 legit stars are homegrown. And in the Warriors case, they had 3 of them, right? You had Steph and you had Clay, who is one of the best 3-and-D players of all time. And you had Draymond, who was a revolutionary defensive player. All right, if that's your starting point, you probably are going to make it work no matter what. But that wasn't going out and acquiring at 3 different times via trade or free agency or whatever a supermax contract that really limits what you're going to be able to do elsewhere on your roster. And like the other thing too is the Lakers, like if you are going to employ, like if you're the Thunder, right? If you're the Thunder and you have so many first rounders, from now till the cows come home, you'll be able to do the 3-star model because you can continue to basically bolster that rotation through first round draft talent as those 3 stars get more and more and more expensive. And it also helps that right now, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be one of your 3 stars. He's homegrown and you have full bird rights on him. Jalen Williams, probably going to be one of those other stars there, also homegrown, full bird rights there. And as those guys grow together organically, like this is not ideal for the player, right, necessarily. But when you have stars that grow together and there's kind of a built-in kind of, what's the term that I'm thinking of? Like order of operations, essentially, or just like a ready-made culture for what type of opportunities guys are going to get. Those limited opportunities via that are maintained with that culture are going to limit what those players are able to do and what type of achievements they're going to be able to make. And so you aren't going to have 3 super max contracts on your books, right? Just like we saw with the Phoenix Suns, you had 3 super max contracts or close to super max contracts. You can't do anything else on your roster there. Like you can't. But if you draft enough talent and they become stars, then yeah, that generally tends to work out in your favor, not just because those guys are talented basketball players and all that stuff, and they grew up together, and there's that built-in culture just that you get by playing together, but also because of the feeding order there, like you're going to have one super max player. You might have another max player who maybe makes an all-star game or something like that. But it's really rare that you're going to have multiple all NBA players early in their careers who then demand that supermax contract and just completely eat up your books. And so, like, that is, I know it's a long-winded way of saying all of this stuff, but the Lakers are we probably know how this is going to go. We know what they're going to pursue right when the offseason starts, and it's going to be back channeling and trying to figure out what they can do to get a third star into the building. And I just don't know, man. That's not how I see the sport. That's not how I view the best way to build out a team. And maybe I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong. If they go out and they trade for Donovan Mitchell, they trade for Trae Young, and it really, really works, and the Lakers, race through the league and win a championship, I will happily sit on here and eat this hat. Maybe. I don't know. It looks like it would cause acid reflux. But like I would happily eat crow and say that I was wrong about everything that I felt about team building in the modern NBA. But we also have too much sample size at this point that like indicates that is a very, very difficult way to build out a team that just completely shrinks your margin for error if none of those three guys are willing to do any of the small things. All right. I'm going to go ahead and dive on into the iTunes mailbag, the Twitter mailbag, the live comments where I'm looking here. And wow, we have 4-starred comments as well. So I'll dive into those here as we roll along as well. But man, what a busy time that we currently find ourselves in here. So the first review that we have here comes from Keep Pre saying, I understand yours and Harrison's take about tanking the 7-8 playing game, but it's good that the Lakers won it because you can see that AD's back was still bothering him and he wasn't himself mobility wise. And then winning the game versus the Pels bought him extra days to rest up. He would have only had a couple days to heal up the back and then would be playing on Friday. Same for LeBron, as he was gassed midway through the fourth. Another reason why you want Denver early is that you'll have both LBJ and AD rested and at their max and not beat up after already going a round or two. Yeah, like I don't know. I would still like if the Lakers lose in 5, it doesn't really change my opinion on avoiding Denver, compared to losing in 4 to this team. They're a really effing good team. And now, like, a version of the point here, right? A counter that I have to offer myself here is as I am the person who is sitting here saying, you got to knock out a team when you possibly can. It's pretty inconsistent with, well, maybe you lose a game to get yourself maybe a marginally better opponent. So or a marginally better matchup for yourself. So those two stances aren't exactly logically consistent, and I get that there would be some frustration there. Look, here's how I feel about this, and I've said this all along. Practically speaking, I think it would have been wise to tank against the Pelicans that same game. Get those, like, it's not like you would have had LeBron and AD play in that game if you're trying to tank it. You would have rested them anyway. So they would have been rested going into that first series anyway. So you rest them that game and you take your chances beating the Kings and then beating and then facing off against an OKC team that the Lakers have played well against all year. And I would have preferred that route versus going right into or running directly into the brick wall that is Nikola Jokic. While I acknowledge all of that stuff, while I say that that's like in my opinion, the most practical approach, that's not how we fan, right? Like, that's not, the organization that prides itself on Mamba mentality, ducking the smoke there, again, not exactly consistent. And for fans to basically root against their team, or for me to ask fans to root against their team in that one game setting would have been a fundamental misunderstanding of what it is to be a fan. And that's where I stand on that. But I appreciate the question. I appreciate the back and forth on that subject. Now, I promise everybody that I read all 5-star iTunes reviews. This one's a 5-star review, but doesn't exactly like me. This is from Brian 1992 J. I enjoy the show. It's consistently uploaded. They share their opinion on games, etc. Anthony's rebranding as a Lakers insider can feel cringe for longtime viewers that know him as a super fan, especially because it's so forward and consistently mentioned. Like he has some contractual agreement to mention it on every show. I actually do. Lakers Daily, it's part of my contract that I say I am a Lakers insider for Lakers Daily. But anyway, like he has a contractual agreement to mention on every show. He pushed some pretty poorly researched breaking news regarding injuries that almost immediately got debunked. I understand his employment probably stipulated this, and then I'm not about to fault a dude for trying to get his money, but it does degrade the quality of the show, which in all other elements brands itself as a show from fans for fans. Here's my thing. We all grow in whatever industry that we are in, right? This thing did start way back in the day. When I started this back in the day, and actually you can find some of those old shows if you know where to look on YouTube. But when it was the Team Tank podcast, and it was me, and it was Harrison and Gary and Ryan and Matt and the whole gang back then, it was a show for fans by fans, right? And we were just fans who didn't have any inside information, just sitting there and reacting to the game that we had just watched that night. And man, it's funny to go back and look at those because I had like a whole, I didn't have a chin underneath my chin. I'm recording that like very clearly from the second bedroom of Jen and my apartment back then, which we were barely able and sometimes not able to afford because of my pursuit of this career. Just a hilarious time to look back on. And then over the years, right, the longer that you do this, you develop more and more and more relationships with people inside and outside of the NBA kind of ecosystem. And I have legit friendships in some of these spots. And what I try to do is offer up the information that I can that helps you, the listener, stay as informed as you can possibly be by way of listening to the show. And yeah, I will be the first one to say that I will occasionally get stuff wrong, right? Gabe Vincent not returning this year, I got that wrong. I got bad information. I'm happy that I was wrong on that front. Like if I'm gonna be wrong, I would prefer that it would mean that good things happen for the Lakers there. And that's something that, like, as I am brand new, this is the very first year that I've ever done this, right? And like Brian says here, longtime listeners of my stuff, watching me learn this and try to figure this out on the fly, it is going to be a little cringy because that's how things always are at the beginning. Like trying out new things at the beginning does tend to be cringy, right? Think of the first time you ever swung a golf club. Think of the first time you ever swung a baseball bat, threw a football, any of those things. It didn't come natural, right? And I do have some experience on in this, but it tended to be on the other side of things where I was in PR and I worked with journalists so that their audience could be as informed as they could be, while I protected information that my clients wanted protected, right? And that I think offers up an interesting angle to all of this, where I can kind of filter out some of the bullshit, as I am not a traditional journalist, and I can try to talk you guys through the stories that I'm trying to break while I break them, and look, the plan is to continue to get better at this so that next year I will be better at that aspect of it than I was this year. And the following year, I'll be better at it than I was the year prior to. And with each story, I try to learn how all of this works and continue to get better for you, for me, right? Because I want to get better at this stuff. But at the end of the day, the main beneficiary is going to be you, the audience. But I do appreciate like the feedback there. It is something that I'd taken. Look, as an example of recent feedback that I took into account, we're doing this thing now where I break up the episodes. If they're longer conversations, I break them up into a couple episodes for the podcast audience, right? And some people were saying, well, when they were releasing wasn't necessarily in the proper order, and some of like the endings of shows just feels kind of clunky and stuff like that. So I said, okay, I'm going to listen to you, the audience, while also listening to the data, and the data indicated that that is good for the show to do. And I'm going to try to balance out both of those things. And so what I've landed on here is, for those who want to listen to the full, however long conversation in its entirety, there's that option. For those of you who want to kind of scan and pick and choose which subjects that you listen to, there's that option for you as well. And then for those of you who want to tune in and watch live to us talking about all of this stuff on YouTube and on Twitter and all that, there's that option for you too there. And that is us building this plane mid-flight, which can get clunky sometimes. You are going to hit some turbulence. The key is learning from the turbulence. All right, I'm going to dive into the now super comments before we get into the other ones from Twitter and all of that stuff, which means I get to play this bad boy. Rye Guy, any chances KD goes to LA after the Suns sweep? There's got to be, ? That's an interesting one. I was texting back and forth. Hope Matt doesn't get angry at me, but we were texting the other night about the Lakers Nuggets series, and he threw out the funny idea of KD to the Lakers, right? I haven't even looked at what the trade would be. Maybe I could try to build that out while I kind of filibuster here. But the idea of KD to the Lakers so that the Suns can kind of get some assets back here and look to rebuild. Maybe KD asks out. I can't imagine he'll ask out. That would not be, I think, the move that I would advise him on. So KD makes $51.1 million I think this year. And so we'll just use that as kind of a general number that the Lakers would need to get to. The Suns would probably ask for Austin Reeves. They would probably ask for Rui Hachimura, and they would probably ask for Jalen Hood-Schifino would probably have to go there too as a pseudo first round pick. Maybe they also ask, I guess, for Jared Vanderbilt or Gabe Vincent, right? And that gets you to $44.5 million. I think that's pretty close. I guess, let's see. Lakers unable to complete this trade. Since they are an over-apron team, they are only able to get back 100. The Suns. On the Suns side of things, they aren't. They're I guess getting too much money back. I don't know. It's all really complicated. I'd have to look into it. But is that something that the Lakers could do? Maybe. But again, like I just talked about all that first, or because I guess a couple previous segments ago, I don't like the idea of just stacking stars and hoping it works, right? Like the Suns this year were an abomination. Like there was no process into that team building. Like, you basically trade, like with Devin Booker, you bring in another bucket getter who doesn't run anything that helps Devin Booker operate more easily on a basketball court. And then you double down with that approach by bringing in Bradley Beal. And then you're thinking, okay, well, that can be kind of like, because of how much overlap there is between those three stars approach to basketball, you need kind of a bright offensive mind to make it work. The Suns, now I guess there's something to be said that the Suns were like, all right, we'll let the stars handle the offense, and then we'll bring in somebody to basically handle the defense. That worked okay when it was LeBron, but they don't have a single player on that team who is anywhere near as smart as LeBron is. And you saw that play out. Their offense was just ISO after ISO after ISO after ISO, and it never made life easier on anybody else. And I think there's a very clear ceiling there. Now, Frank Vogel is probably going to get fired as a result of that season. And poor Frank, this is now 2 straight jobs that were made more difficult by the acquisition of a huge contract from Washington. I would I hope he gets another opportunity as a head coach. I don't think he will after this. But like that is, if he takes another one, I hope he just gets like a nice young rebuilding team that he can just kind of grow with and just stay away from, superstars who just tell him basically, no, I'm not doing X, I'm not doing Y, I'm not doing Z. And yeah, like I just as far as to actually answer the question, any chance that KD goes to LA, I would put it at like a 2% chance. It could happen, but there would be a lot that would have to take place before it becomes even remotely possible. Next one here comes from Brandon Oeming, which means tomorrow, wouldn't mind TP getting more run on MPJ because he can chase better than Rui. Gabe is better than Spencer, or Gabe getting more minutes than Spencer, please. And if Vando was available, I'm playing him. Yeah, I think I would agree with 2.5 of those things. I think the Lakers, like the mistake that the Lakers keep making with Rui is that they put too much emphasis on the things that he can't do, and they don't highlight the things that he can. And rather than try to figure out ways to get more out of Rui, they just wind up benching him. And that's just, it didn't work for them throughout the entirety of the regular season. And making that mistake again in the postseason just doesn't seem all that smart to me. So me personally, I would try to find some way to get Rui going. Um, I would run more pick and roll with him and like really hammer home to him. Hey, be physical, actually set the screen, because he isn't a great short role player. He's not a facilitator in any way whatsoever, but he finishes relatively well. He's got those big hands. The Lakers have basically stopped using him as a baseline cutter, and that hasn't made much sense to me. So I wouldn't completely ditch Rui quite yet. But I think if you stop playing Spencer, again, that's 14 minutes or so. You give a few of those minutes to Prince. You give a few more of those minutes to Austin Reeves. You get the remainder of them to Vando to see how his body holds up in this setting. That's how I would kind of handle the math here for game 5. Rye Guy saying Sham's son's article just dropped, and yikes. Yeah, I haven't read it yet. I've been on the air. So maybe it'll be something that I respond or react to in tomorrow's show. But yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me at all that a thing would be such a disaster there, and you would immediately see all kinds of finger pointing and distancing people distancing themselves from mistakes that were made there. And clearly a giant mistake was made there in trading for Bradley Beal. Like that's a franchise ender. Like, you make a mistake that bad and you wind up potentially having to trade Kevin Durant or having to trade Devin Booker. Or those guys just ask out because Beal's contract and Beal the player is so difficult to manage that you keep on bumping up against the glass ceiling that you just put over yourself. And eventually Booker and or KD get sick of it and they say, all right, well, good luck with that guy. I'm out of here. All right. The final super comment that we have here is from Rez, which means I'll play this one more time. Rez says, Anthony, let's start the Mikal Bridges agenda. Reeves, Rui, picks. Yeah, I mean, like, I would do everything in my power, every possible thing, even if it costs an extra first round pick. I would hold on to Reeves and try to go into next year with Reeves, maybe Vincent, right? I'd have to look at what contract you would have to move here. But Reeves and, Vincent and Bridges and LeBron and AD as kind of like your best 5-man lineup going into next year. And that to me is a squad that makes a whole bunch of sense. And in that case, you're trading for a biggish contract in Mikal Bridges, but he is capable and willing to do those little things. And you have Reeves, who Last year, I thought, not this last regular season, but I guess 2 seasons ago, um, he did more of the little things, and I think if he is going to be that kind of valuable again, he'll need to get back to doing more of those little things. Then you have LeBron and obviously AD, and that, like, to me, I don't know. I don't think the Nets are all that interested in moving him. And we keep hearing basically every trade deadline or summer or any other period in which players change teams, the Nets love to brag and leak how many picks that they turned down for Mikal Bridges. That's all great. Seems really stupid now, seeing as you're, basically heading towards a rebuild anyway. But you know what? Do you, Brooklyn, I guess. And yet, like, for the Lakers, if you can, if you can somehow get Bridges and keep Reeves, even if it costs you an extra first rounder to do so, that's the route that I would take here. Because we know those guys like playing together. They had an entire bromance last summer when they played on that FIBA team together. You have Bridges, who is a really good defender, moves his feet really well, nice long defender too, good team defender, knocks down threes as well, has some creative chops, and would just fit in perfectly. He's the kind of player who, like, once he gets around better players, he becomes better. Obviously, when you play with LeBron, you play with Anthony Davis, you think he's going to get better there too. And that's how I would, like, he's the person who I have highlighted his name, right? Underlined his name, done the square box thing. If you want to put a heart around it as well, I've done that, just like hoping on hope that the Lakers can somehow, some way walk away this next summer with Mikal Bridges. All right. I Because I attached it to a link, it wouldn't surprise me if I didn't get any questions directly from Twitter here. Yeah, it looks like I only got 2 responses there. So I'm going to dive into the comments here as well. Yeah, sorry. Somebody already asked for no F Boston. Whoops. All right. Yeah, I'm looking here. I'm not seeing very many comments, straight comments here. Still scrolling. Ton of comments. Really appreciate that. Oh, here we go. Cancun Lakers asking who would Vando match up with if he came back tomorrow? How much would it help? I would basically just try to, like, let him basically get into a mud wrestling fight with Aaron Gordon and see how that goes. See if you can wear him out so that he isn't so physical and doesn't have such a physical advantage every second that he's on the court, not guarding LeBron or not being guarded by LeBron. LeBron has done a pretty poor job. He's fallen asleep a lot defensively in this series. Vando, I would think, helps you a little bit there. And then look, Vando is still a tough player to play offensively. He can't shoot. There was all that hope and prayer that maybe he would improve as a shooter this year, but he did not, and that makes things really difficult there. We'll kind of see what that would look like. But I do think he's a talented enough player, and he's a big enough part of the Lakers' identity that I would try to give him a go. He's too good to basically just give him a DNP CD. It's close, right? But we'll see. Green Machine asking, what's the likelihood Ham will be fired if we lose tomorrow? Man, I can't quite get into that right now. I don't have it well enough to be able to say one way or another. But Ham certainly went from, like, had the Lakers lost, the belief was that he was probably going to be let go on Sunday with exit interviews Monday. And then had now, you win that game 5, and is there all that big of a difference in the job that Darvin Ham did when you compare merely winning 1 game against Denver versus not winning any games against Denver? I don't think so. I don't think it changes how I view Ham as a coach. But again, as I've said all year, Jeannie and Rob have looked all season for reasons not to fire the guy. And, if you finally break through and you win one game against Denver, and if game 6 is, or if game 5 is competitive, maybe they let him keep his job. If you win game 5 and you wind up going to 6 against Denver, that probably saves his job outright. I'm thinking, this is speculation now. And if you get to 7, yeah, I would think his job would be safe in that scenario here. But yeah, again, like Raj and I talked about, I am not of the opinion that you lose playoff games for the sake of just merely firing a head coach. While you have LeBron in his age 39 season playing the way that he is. So, maybe you saved the wrong guy's job by winning game 5, maybe, but it's still worth it to me. And there's still a possibility there, a decent possibility, I would say, that even though you won that game 5 against Denver, or even though you won game 4 against Denver, and you earned yourself a game 5 in Denver, there's still I think, pretty decent chance that even that isn't enough to save Darvin Ham's job. And look, here's the thing. It's still a person's livelihood that we're talking about here, and it's a really good livelihood, and he would still have $8 million left on his contract and then go right back to making probably 6 figures as an assistant coach, elsewhere in the league. So, like, it isn't quite the same as completely, somebody losing their job and completely derailing their life or whatever. But it is still like somebody who has a family and all those things. I think it's in kind of poor taste for me to sit here on the show to just root outright for the guy to lose his job. Right. I don't like feeling like I'm doing that. So I'm gonna try to avoid that sentiment. But for those who were asking, like, what did that game 4 win mean as it pertains to Ham's employment? It improves the chances that he's back, but I don't think it solidifies the chance that he comes back. All right. That is, I think, going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lowdown. Really appreciate all the comments and the questions and all of that stuff. And hell, like, even the person who left the, I guess, somewhat critical comment on iTunes, I appreciate the 5-star review. And as I say, I'm going to answer all of them if it comes down to it, and have an honest back and forth with however that person feels about the show. The plan for tomorrow, obviously, the Lakers play tomorrow night. So right after the game, Raj and I will be here in the lounge to recap the game. And if they win, we'll be talking about the season that was. And if they if they win, we'll be like kind of absolutely freaking out about the possibility of how game 6 could possibly go back at home. If they lose, we'll talk about the season that was, and we'll talk about the offseason that is to be. So until the next time you guys hear from me, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day, make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow.